name is Piers Bishop, and I have played the piano for about 6 years now. Pianos didn't always look like this, and I'm curious to find out the history of the piano. Let me take you on a journey to explore the past of the piano.
From my research, the earliest keyboard was the hydraulis, which was used as an instrument in the 1st century BCE, and various forms of this keyboard were in existence up until the first clavichord in the 14th century. From then on, from the 14th to the 18th century, the harpsichord dominated. Famous composers such as Bach, Handel, Couperin wrote for the harpsichord and also the clavichord. To understand the development of the grand piano, we need to see and hear these early instruments.
Where I am today at the Early Music Shop in St Maltings, where I'm going to show you some of the early music instruments apart from the keyboard.
Clavichord is a completely different mechanism to a harpsichord or a spinet. Because, look, these are the keys, and the only thing that makes the sound is the little piece of metal, the brass tangent at the end of each key. It just rises and strikes the string. Okay, that's all that does. And it's always very, very quiet. Always quiet, because it's got a tiny little soundboard and it's not particularly aggressive, the action on the string just touching it with a piece of metal. You can, it's also, unlike the harpsichord and spinet, it is a little bit touch sensitive, so you can bend the notes. You don't have to see how it sharp up. And so you know what it sounds like. And the only way you can make a harpsichord louder is by adding another set of strings. Do you see that with each note, do you see there's like 2 strings going back here? These aren't all different notes, they're 2 notes per string, 2 strings per note. So you can add another set of strings. It's already louder if I take it off. It's just one string. That's the only way. So pressing harder, unlike on the piano, which is totally touch sensitive, pressing harder makes no difference. It just always sounds the same. So you've got to add more strings to make more sound.
Would there have been a famous maker of the time?
There were famous makers, yeah. I mean, you get. And what happens now is that quite often makers copy their instruments because you might achieve the same. It's a bit like the violins we've got, which are not obviously Stradivarius or whatever, but
it's a model.
They're modelling on it and trying to use the same materials. And so we keep this little bar. Someone's very usefully put a treble clef.
Which
bass
side,
clef,
exactly.
I know which way around it goes. In here, that just also helps to keep the jacks in place when you finish playing. Otherwise, they all jump around. And so that's the sort of basic sound. This one's also got a thing called this little bar here. There's these felts like there were on the jacks. So if you engage that,
Oh, nice.
so it's like plucking a sometimes called the lute stop or the buff size. This instrument, you would recognise it because it doesn't have quite as many keys as the modern Steinway concert grand or any other modern piano has actually. It's slightly less keys. You would recognise it because the action is quite light. It's quite a light action. This particular model of piano has no pedals, it has knee levers. So under here, if you put your hand underneath, just put your hand there, you'll feel it, it's a knee lever. If you press it up, it's 2. So instead of pressing downwards to stem the pedal, it's a lever and you press up. It takes a bit getting used to actually. And the action is incredibly light. I mean, it's very light.
So how did we get from there to the piano I'm sitting at right now?
We've looked at the instruments which define the Baroque era, 1600 to 1750, and this was followed by the Classical era, 1750 to 1830, where Haydn, Mozart and Beethoven were composing and playing on forte pianos. The sound of the music that they were now composing had really started to change. More emphasis was placed on melody. Composers began to write instructions for dynamics in their music. Composers began to want more from their instruments. Bartolomeo Cristofori was an Italian maker of musical instruments and became very famous for inventing the first forte piano. This piano was well known for being able to play dynamics, depending on how hard or soft you pressed the keys. This was able to happen due to the hammer mechanism, not the pluck mechanism. There are only 3 Cristofori pianos left in the world today. Where it starts to get very exciting for the piano is the Romantic era, through the 1800s to the 1910s, where we start to see music that is highly emotive and intense, inspired by nature, literature and poetry. Pianists who were also composers, and composers who were also pianists, began writing pieces which demanded more and more of the keyboards they were playing on. Concerts started to become more available to the public, where before they used to be in people's houses, churches, palaces and royal courts. And pianists/composers started to become very famous. Liszt, a famous Hungarian composer, was essentially the nowadays Taylor Swift.
I'm here with George Sewell from Steinway, and I'm here to ask him a couple of questions about the history of Steinway. In your opinion, how do you think musicians choose their pianos for their homes and performances in concert halls?
Wow, that's a big question. Many aspects go into that. The general rule with pianists is that they want to have something that's going to be able to, of course, express themselves. In that aspect, it depends on the situation, the space that it's actually going to go into. But the general rule is fairly simple: is the larger the piano, the better, because you get a longer string length, which gives a richer sound, and also you get a longer hammer length too, which gives you more control on the sound. Now, you always have to look back and consider the room that it's going to go into too. But a pianist, they generally want the largest piano that they can get their hands on.
Do you think the development of Steinway grand pianos had an effect on the size of concert halls being built and the type of repertoire that composers were composing?
I think without a doubt, because music used to be a much more intimate occasion a much more intimate affair, I suppose. With the development, of the iron frame, which enabled the piano to have more tension on it, so had more volume on it. It allowed them to play to larger audiences. So that there's no doubt the modern piano allowed them to play to within bigger console and have bigger consoles.
think makes Steinway different from other pianos?
So I've been selling pianos for 20 years, and I started my journey in Harrods, and there they sold every other piano but Steinway pianos, and I was always wondering, why was I losing out to Steinway? And so to give you a bit of background about me, I was a singer, a classical singer at music college, and the way you sing and sing when you're trained as a classical singer, you try and find this focus that and when you get it, it cuts through to the back of the concert hall. And Steinway have been able to do the same thing with bits of wood and metal, and that's the clever thing about it. And I think it's that aspect that sets them apart. So referring back to the way the sound carries, the life force of the piano is the soundboard, and it's shaped like this. It tapers off to the edge like this, and this is one of our patents. And they put a huge pressure, 20 tons of pressure, so it has a crest on top, flat underneath. And it creates this three-dimensional sound that cuts through, and this was really clever because, like I say, it's the same way that you do when you sing and you get this sound that just goes straight through, and I always marvel at that. So I think it's that aspect for me that sets them aside from other pianos.
Why are pianos made in the 1880s still in regular use of musicians?
So generally, yes, they are still in use, and they are lovely. They have lovely character, lovely sounds. But a piano actually doesn't necessarily get better with age, because it is actually a mechanical thing, and it's actually, many people think that often an old piano it can be better than a new piano. For me, I'm afraid it's the opposite, in as much that because it's a mechanical thing, they are getting worn down, and so it's genuinely the newer piano the better. Not saying that the older ones are not good, it's just that they may have limitations and they may not have the same explosion of sound that you get with a new piano. All pianos are wonderful, and I love discovering new pianos and finding the different colours and sounds that they can all create. But it's what makes our world here in Steinway very interesting.
Great, thank you so much for answering my questions.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching my short documentary on the rise of the grand piano, and I really hope you've learned something new. Thank you.